we are going to go over the Romeo and Juliet review together. Watch this entire video. I will be as quick as I can, but all of this information is good test information. So make sure to watch it from beginning to end, please. All right, the first thing, we haven't talked about this for a while, but there was a prologue at the beginning of the play before Act 1 started, just letting the audience know that the play would be about two people who fell in love and were doomed, and that there were two families that these two people belonged to that were fighting and would only stop fighting after the death of their children. So just remember, the prologue comes before just to kind of let the audience know what to be prepared for. The next part of the play that we looked at was Act 1. The Capulets are having a party. Romeo and his friends attend in masks, which isn't so strange because it is a costume party. And so Romeo and his friends are in disguise because they are Montagues. They are there to see Rosaline, but then Romeo is going to see Juliet and instantly fall in love, and they will meet with each other. And so that is a big part of Act 1, that Romeo and Juliet do meet and do figure out that Juliet is a Capulet and Romeo is a Montague, and they are worried that they won't be able to work it out. After that, we get to Act 2. This is the balcony scene. This is where we have Romeo with the aside, where he asks the audience if he should continue to listen to Juliet when she doesn't know he's there. So again, an aside is when you speak to the audience, but no one else on the stage can hear you. We also have soliloquies during this act. A soliloquy is when a character is just going to be talking to himself or to herself about his or her thoughts. And so we'll have Romeo speaking to himself about how beautiful Juliet is, and Juliet speaking to herself about how much she loves Romeo. They do decide to get married, and so we start Act 3 with a very happy Romeo and a very happy Juliet until Romeo meets up with Mercutio and Tybalt in the middle of Verona. Mercutio is going to be so upset with how Romeo is behaving. Romeo refuses to fight Tybalt because he's secretly married to Juliet, and Tybalt is her cousin, so he doesn't want to hurt Juliet like that. Mercutio, however, calls Tybalt a rat catcher and asks him if he will walk, which means, will you fight? And so Tybalt finally agrees to fight Mercutio. Tybalt does kill Mercutio, which then leads Romeo to kill Tybalt. This death is going to cause Romeo to be banished. It's going to cause Juliet's marriage to Paris to be arranged, and it's basically going to lead to the death, ultimately, of Romeo and Juliet. So this is a real turning point. Romeo killing Tybalt is a turning point in the play, and from that point on, everything's working towards, is this going to be a happy ending or is this going to be a sad ending? This is a tragedy, so we know there is no happy ending, and we know from the beginning, from the prologue, that this play does have a sad ending. So again, this is a tragedy. It's going to work towards having pretty much a terrible ending after Romeo kills Tybalt. It falls to pieces. Romeo and Juliet are able to spend the night together before he heads off to Mantua. He's been banished from Verona forever by the prince, so that is definitely something that is not good. At the end of Act 3, Juliet refuses to marry Paris. Her father is so upset with her. He says she will marry Paris or he will disown her. She stops trusting her nurse because her nurse thinks she should just go ahead and marry Paris since Romeo's gone anyway. So by the end of Act 3, Juliet has become pretty much suicidal and stopped listening to her elders or the adults in her life. She needs a new plan because she does not want to marry Paris. So Juliet's character has changed a lot from just an innocent little girl to someone who is willing to die for love. She did not start off the play that way. In Act 4, Juliet goes to the friar. He's going to help her because of the complication that's arisen. We do have her father wanting her to marry Paris, which is just a big complication in the play. It's causing Juliet to have to make decisions very quick. Paris is at the church when Juliet arrives in Act 4. He thinks she's just very upset because Tybalt has just died. He leaves her so she can confess. He gives her a kiss. This is the last time Paris sees Juliet alive. Again, Paris is in love with Juliet, but Juliet really just doesn't care for him. The friar comes up with a plan for Juliet to take this potion because he decides if she's brave enough to kill herself, she should be brave enough to go through with this plan and hope that it works. They do not see any reason that that it would end badly, and so he says, go home, agree to marry Paris, take this potion. When you wake up, Romeo will take you to Mantua. You'll be together. This will be a happy ending for you. So it all seems good when she leaves the friar. She does go to her father and let him know that she plans to take or to marry Paris. He's so excited. He moves the wedding from Thursday to Wednesday, which is again another complication in this story. And so Juliet has to take the potion on Tuesday night instead of Wednesday night. She takes the potion in the morning. The nurse finds her when she goes to get her for the wedding. The nurse starts screaming. Juliet's family comes in. They are all screaming and crying. They have to prepare for a wedding instead of a funeral. During this time and during all the wedding planning, the friar is kind of in with all of this. He speaks to the audience a few times about his decisions. These would be asides. Again, he's not speaking to himself. He's speaking to the audience, kind of asking whether or not he should tell the truth. Also, just another thing to note, before Juliet took the potion in Act 4, just a reminder, she was a little nervous that it would be poison instead of potion. Obviously, we know that it does end up being just potion, thankfully. The friar did not want to hurt Juliet. He wanted to help her. Act 5 begins with Balthazar going to Mantua. He has seen Juliet being put into the family tomb. He thinks she is dead. He tells Romeo she is dead. Romeo kind of goes a little bit crazy and heads to the apothecary, who would be kind of like a pharmacist today. The apothecary gives Romeo an illegal poison. He says it's strong enough to kill 10 men, so it will really do the job. Romeo gives him some money for it. Romeo heads off to Verona to see if Juliet is really dead, and he plans to take the poison if she is dead. At the same time, Friar Lawrence finds out that Friar John did not make it to Romeo in time. Friar John was stuck because he got stuck in the middle of, like the sickness thing, and so he wasn't able to get there fast enough. Also, the time was just sped up for all of this to happen. And so Friar Lawrence decides to go to the Capulet tomb to rescue Juliet because he doesn't think Romeo knows anything. So he's not going there to meet Romeo, he's going there to help Juliet. So Romeo's on his way to the Capulet tomb, and so is Friar Lawrence. At this point, the audience would be hoping that the friar would be able to catch Romeo in time. When Romeo gets to the Capulet tomb, Paris is there visiting Juliet's body, kind of leaving flowers there. Paris thinks that Romeo is there to do something bad to the Capulets, maybe hurt Tybalt's body, and so he says he needs to fight him. Romeo does not want to fight Paris, but they do. They have a duel, and Paris loses. He dies. He asks to be placed next to Juliet. Romeo does that because he knows that Paris didn't know anything, so he puts him next to Juliet's body, and then Romeo takes the poison just before Juliet's about to wake up. Juliet wakes up, the friar lets her know the plan has gone wrong, tries to get her out, fails to get her out, he runs off. Juliet sees Romeo, she takes his dagger, she stabs herself, she dies. And then eventually the friar and Balthazar will let the prince know what's happened, and the prince says that the families need to put this feud to bed forever, and they agree to. And so the punishment for the Capulets and the Montagues is that they lost their children. The prince decides that's enough. Each of the families puts up a statue for the other family, and there is never any fighting between the Capulets or the Montagues. Again, a theme for this play would be that hate destroys. I mean, the hate that these two families had destroyed number of people's lives, took away their lives, they had death, they lost their own children. Definitely, it's not a play necessarily about love. Love does not work out for Romeo and Juliet. This is just a very tragic play and a tragic lesson. So it's, again, not a happy ending. Some terms to know. Again, we've gone over aside and soliloquy. An aside is when you speak to the audience. A soliloquy is when you speak to yourself. Dramatic irony is big in this play. Remember, that's when the audience knows more than the people in the play. Also, just make sure you know a simile is a comparison using like or as. There is foreshadowing in this play, which means there are clues to what's going to happen in the end. A metaphor is going to be a comparison. And then those should be all of the terms that you see on this test. If you need anything more with characters, then there is a Quizlet in the Canvas module that you should also study before we take the test. So again, the test is next block. Please make sure that you are ready to go. You know the timeline, you know the characters, you know what happened in the play, and you should be good to go.